I found her crouched behind a dumpster in the alley beside St. Andrew's shelter, her 2-year-old pressed against her chest, both of them shaking in the November cold. She had a grocery bag over her shoulder and a look in her eyes. I recognized not fear exactly, but the particular exhaustion of someone who has been afraid for so long they've forgotten what calm feels like. This wasn't a stranger. This was my granddaughter. And until 3 weeks ago, she had no idea I existed. I need to back up, because none of this makes sense without understanding what my son did, and what my son did doesn't make sense without understanding the kind of man he became, which is nothing like the boy I raised. The folder had been sitting on my kitchen table for 11 days. My reading glasses were on top of it. Every morning I'd come downstairs, put the kettle on, and sit across from it like it was a person I didn't want to have a conversation with. My housekeeper, Rosa, had stopped asking about it. She'd worked for me long enough to know when I was working up to something. I'm 74 years old. I live alone in a 4-bedroom house in Savannah, Georgia, that Arthur and I bought in 1987 when the company was finally doing well enough that we could stop watching every dollar. Arthur died 9 years ago. Pancreatic cancer, 6 weeks from diagnosis to gone. The kind of loss that doesn't leave you so much as rearrange you permanently, the way a broken bone heals crooked if you don't set it right. After Arthur died, I kept running Whitmore Design, our architectural firm, because what else was I going to do? Sit in this house and count the rooms. The company had been Arthur's dream first and then ours together. 22 employees, mostly residential work, some commercial, good reputation in the southeast. Running it gave me somewhere to be every morning. What it did not give me was family. My son, Conrad, had made sure of that. The investigator's name was Paulette Chen. She was efficient and unsentimental, which was exactly what I needed. The report she'd left on my table was 61 pages. I'd read it twice already. What I couldn't stop coming back to was page 47, a photograph taken from across a parking lot. A young woman loading a car seat into a rusted Honda Civic. The child in her arms had dark hair and her head tilted to one side, the exact way Arthur used to tilt his when he was concentrating on something. Her name was Lily. Lily Grace Whitmore, 23 years old. Her mother, Jessamine Park, had died from complications following surgery 18 months ago. A routine appendectomy that went wrong in the way terrible things sometimes go wrong for no good reason. Conrad had been out of Lily's life since before the baby was born. He'd signed away parental rights when Lily was 4, a decision her mother had apparently accepted because she wanted Conrad gone more than she wanted his money. What Lily didn't know was that Jessamine had reached out to me once, 7 years ago. A letter, 2 pages, careful handwriting on plain paper. She wrote that she'd found my name in some paperwork, that she thought I should know I had a granddaughter, that she wasn't asking for anything, just thought I deserved to know. I never received that letter. I found out about it 6 weeks ago, when I discovered Conrad had a P.O. box address forwarded for any mail sent to the firm that mentioned his name. He'd intercepted it. He'd read it and thrown it away. He'd been doing this, I later learned, because he told Lily and Jessamine that my husband and I were dead, both of us. He'd shown Lily a photograph of a grave. I still don't know where he got it. The morning I finally opened the folder all the way and read to the end, I sat with my cold tea for a long time. Then I called Rosa and asked her to tell my assistant I wouldn't be in the office this week. Then I booked a flight to Baltimore. I didn't tell anyone where I was going or why. There was nothing to tell yet. There was only a photograph of a young woman with Arthur's way of tilting her head, and the knowledge that she was alone in a city I barely knew, with a toddler and a dead mother and a father who had erased the only family she had left. The shelter on Remington Avenue was a converted warehouse, clean but institutional, the kind of place that smells like industrial soap and effort. Paulette had given me an address but warned me it was a waitlist situation. Lily had applied for a bed 3 weeks earlier and hadn't gotten one yet. She was staying in her car mostly, using the shelter's services during the day. I flew in on a Tuesday morning, took a cab to a Marriott downtown, checked in, and then sat on the edge of the bed in my coat for 20 minutes before I made myself get up. What exactly was I planning to say? Hello, I'm your grandmother. Your father lied about my existence for your entire life, and I flew up here to find you. I am 74 years old and I have never been good at soft conversations. Arthur used to say I approached emotional situations the same way I approached a building permit. Identify what needs to happen, gather the documentation, proceed. It was 40 degrees and drizzling when my cab dropped me off near the shelter. I was wearing my good wool coat and sensible boots and carrying an umbrella that turned inside out in the first strong gust. I was not, I acknowledged to myself, prepared for this in any of the ways that mattered. The shelter coordinator, a young man named Devon, was polite but cautious when I explained I was looking for someone. He couldn't share information about guests. I understood. I gave him my card and asked if he could simply pass it along to a young woman named Lily Whitmore and let her decide whether to contact me. He looked at the card, Whitmore Design, my name, my cell number, and something shifted in his expression. I was walking back toward the street when I heard her. "Excuse me." I turned. She was standing at the alley entrance 10 feet away, the toddler balanced on her hip. She was wearing a coat that wasn't warm enough for the weather, and she had Arthur's eyes. Dark brown, slightly wide-set, with that same quality of paying more attention than most people realized. "Are you looking for me?" she asked. Her voice was careful, not hostile, but not open either. The voice of someone who had learned to assess situations before committing to them. "If you're Lily Whitmore," I said, "then yes. Devon showed me your card." She shifted the baby to her other hip. "That's my last name, Whitmore. I've never met anyone else with it. I should have had something prepared. I didn't. My name is Genevieve Whitmore," I said. "Arthur Whitmore was my husband. He was your grandfather. I know your father told you we were gone, but we weren't. We didn't know about you until very recently, and I am so sorry it took me this long to find you." The baby reached up and grabbed a fistful of Lily's hair. She didn't react, just kept looking at me. The rain was getting heavier. "Conrad," she said. Not a question, just the word like a stone dropped in still water. "Yes." She was quiet for a long moment. "I don't understand any of this. I know." I held up my umbrella, which was mostly decorative at this point, given the wind. "Can we go somewhere warm? I'd like to tell you everything, but I'd rather do it somewhere your daughter isn't getting rained on." Her name was Maeve. She was 26 months old and had a cold that had turned her nose permanently pink, and she regarded me with the frank suspicion of a toddler who has learned that new people require scrutiny. She accepted a cracker from the pocket of my coat. I'd bought them at the airport, some parental instinct surfacing from 40 years ago, and then sat in the diner booth beside her mother and stared at me while she ate it. Lily ordered coffee and a bowl of soup she ate like someone who hadn't had a real meal in a few days. I didn't comment on it. I ordered the same and let her eat before I said anything. I told her everything. Conrad's early resentment of the firm, the slow years when Arthur and I were building something and Conrad was impatient with the pace of it, the way he'd charmed clients and colleagues while his relationship with us hollowed out, the money we'd given him to start his own practice, which he'd burned through in 14 months on things that were not architectural work, the argument when Arthur confronted him, the one that ended with Conrad walking out and not coming back. He'd told us Lily's mother had miscarried. He'd told her we were dead. He was, I had come to understand, a man who solved problems by making people disappear. Lily listened. She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug and listened. And when I was done, she said, "He told me there was a grave, a photograph." "I know. I don't know where he got it. He's done this before," she said quietly. "Made things disappear, people, situations." She looked at her daughter. "He was out of my life before Maeve was born. My mum tried to find a way to get a message to you, just once." "The letter," I said. She looked up. You knew? I found out about it 6 weeks ago. He intercepted it. I never saw it. I paused. I'm sorry. If I had known, I would have found you years ago. She was quiet for a long moment, doing the math on what might have been different. I let her do the math. It was her right. What do you want? She finally asked. Not aggressively, just directly, the question of someone who had been let down enough times to ask it out loud. I want you to be safe, I said. I want to get to know my granddaughter. I want Maeve to know where she comes from. I kept my hands flat on the table, visible. I am not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to let me help, practically, right now, and make your own decisions about everything else once you're somewhere warm and stable. She looked at Maeve. The toddler had finished her cracker and was now trying to reach my umbrella handle with great determination. She has a respiratory thing, Lily said. The shelter gave us a referral for a clinic, but I haven't gotten there yet. There's a pediatric urgent care 2 blocks from my hotel, I said. I looked it up this morning. She almost smiled. Of course you did. We got Maeve seen that afternoon. Bronchiolitis, early stage. The doctor prescribed a nebulizer treatment and sent us out with a prescription and instructions. Lily sat with Maeve in her lap through the whole appointment, one hand on her daughter's back, the other gripping the chair arm. When the doctor said Maeve would be fine with proper treatment and rest, Lily's face did something I recognized, the expression of someone releasing a fear they'd been holding so tightly they'd forgotten it was there. I offered her the second room in my hotel suite for the night, and then for however long she needed. She hesitated for a long time. I'm not asking you to accept anything permanent, I said, just somewhere warm for Maeve to sleep while she recovers. She accepted. That first night, I heard Lily giving Maeve her nebulizer treatment through the adjoining door, talking to her in a low, steady voice to keep her calm. Maeve didn't like the mask. Lily told her a story about a rabbit who was also afraid of masks and eventually learned they made her stronger. By the end of the story, Maeve was quiet. I sat in the dark in my room and thought about Arthur, about what he would have said if he'd known. He would have been furious about Conrad. Then he would have set the fury aside and focused entirely on the practical problem, which was what Arthur always did. He would have said, "Fix what you can fix. Let the rest be someone else's reckoning." I was still learning to do it his way. We flew back to Savannah 4 days later, once Maeve's breathing had stabilized and Lily had decided she was willing to try. She was clear that it was a trial. She wanted to look for work, get on her feet, not be dependent on anyone. I said that was fine. That was exactly right, and I meant it. She and Maeve took the guest suite on the south side of the house, overlooking the back garden. Maeve immediately identified the ceramic bird collection on the bookshelf as objects that required intensive investigation, and I relocated them to a higher shelf. For the first 2 weeks, Lily kept a careful, polite distance. She was grateful in the way of someone who doesn't entirely trust their own gratitude, suspicious of it, monitoring it. She cooked dinner twice and left portions in the kitchen for me without fanfare. She asked careful questions about Arthur, always careful, as if she was afraid of wanting something from the answers. One evening, I was looking through the flat files in my home studio, Arthur's original drawings, from before we formalized the practice, and I heard her in the doorway. "Can I come in, please?" She walked in slowly, the way she'd walked into everything in those early weeks, with that watchful quality. She looked at the drawings spread across the table. Arthur's draftsmanship had been remarkable, precise and intuitive at the same time. Every line purposeful. "Did he draw all of these?" she asked. These are from the late 70s mostly, before AutoCAD, before we had anyone else. I turned one of the sheets so she could see it better. This was a house in Tybee Island, a family with 4 kids who'd outgrown their space. Arthur redesigned the whole back wing to give them room to grow. She studied the drawing for a long time. "I wanted to be an architect," she said. "In high school, I used to draft floor plans for fun." She paused. I didn't think I didn't know if it was a real possibility. My mum was supportive, but we didn't have money for a 4-year program. What did you study? 2 years at a community college. Business administration. Then my mum got sick and I took a leave, and then I didn't go back. She said it without self-pity, just as information, the plain accounting of a life rerouted by circumstances. I'm good at a lot of things, just not anything that has a clear title. Arthur was the same way, I said. He was good at everything that required him to understand how things fit together. Systems, spaces, people. I looked at the drawing on the table. He would have had 100 questions for you. That was the first time she cried. Not dramatically, just quietly, looking at her grandfather's handwriting in the corner of the drawing, the date and his initials, and the small symbol he always used, a tiny square within a square that meant he considered the design finished. She pressed her fingers against it and then stepped back and apologized for crying, and I told her she had absolutely nothing to apologize for. 3 weeks later, she mentioned that Whitmore Design had a job posting she'd seen on the firm's website. Project coordinator, she said carefully at breakfast. I know you run the company. I'm not asking you to. I just wanted to be transparent that I applied through the normal portal. I know, I said. My hiring manager flagged it. She looked at me. I told her to treat your application exactly like everyone else's, I said. Which means you'll have a phone screen and then an in-person interview, same as any other candidate. And if I don't get it, then you don't get it, and we keep looking. She got it. She was the strongest candidate, my hiring manager told me afterward, without knowing who she was. She'd prepared extensively, knew our portfolio, had specific observations about inefficiencies in our project tracking system that were both accurate and useful. She started the following Monday. She was methodical. She asked questions constantly, not to show off, but because she genuinely wanted to understand how the pieces connected. Within her first month, she'd identified a bottleneck in our permit application process that had been costing us 3 to 4 weeks on every residential project. She proposed a fix, we tested it, it worked. Marcus, our senior project manager, who was famously unimpressed by new hires, stopped in my doorway one afternoon and said, "That coordinator you hired, she thinks like an architect." I just said, "She does, doesn't she?" She was on her feet now. She'd moved Maeve into a licensed daycare 2 blocks from the office. She'd found a pediatric practice she liked. She was getting better at sleeping, though I could still sometimes see the hollows under her eyes that said the previous months hadn't entirely let go. What I hadn't told her yet was everything about Conrad. I'd been careful with the timing. Lily knew the broad strokes, that Conrad had lied, that he'd intercepted the letter, that he'd told her a false story about her family. What she didn't know was that I had recently discovered he'd also, in the years since he left us, attempted twice to access Arthur's estate on my behalf, forging documentation using the Whitmore name, and been turned away both times by our estate attorney, who had noted the attempts and said nothing to me because he'd assumed I knew. I'd found out while updating our records after a recent board review. I told her on a Saturday when Maeve was napping and the house was quiet. We sat at the kitchen table with coffee, and I laid it out plainly, all of it, the forged documents, the intercepted mail, the years of deliberate erasure. She listened without interrupting. When I was done, she said, "He wasn't just trying to protect himself, he was protecting access to your resources." Yes, and if I'd inherited anything from my grandfather, he'd positioned himself to contest it or to be nearby when it came up. I met her eyes. "I'm telling you because you need to know and because I should have found a way to tell you sooner." She looked at her coffee. I knew he wasn't a good person. I didn't know the shape of it. None of us did. Not fully. She was quiet for a long moment. "What happens now?" "With him," my attorney has filed with the court. "Given the documented attempts, there's enough for a restraining order against any contact with me, with you or with anything related to the estate or the firm." I set a document on the table. "I wanted you to see it before it was served. It's your family too." She looked at the papers. You didn't have to show me this. Yes, I did. She nodded slowly. Then she got up and poured herself more coffee, and when she sat back down there was something slightly different in her posture. Not harder, more settled. The difference between someone carrying a weight and someone who has put it down and decided what to carry instead. 4 months after that conversation, Whitmore Design had its annual partner meeting. I'd been running the firm as sole principal since Arthur's death, which was more than one person should hold. I was tired in the deep way that doesn't respond to sleep, tired of carrying the whole architecture of something that was built for two. The conference table that day had 12 people around it, every senior member of the firm, and one project coordinator who had been invited because her operational analysis of our residential pipeline was the centerpiece of the quarterly review. Lily presented it standing, which she hadn't been asked to do, using drawings she'd made by hand in addition to the digital slides, because she thought the hand-drawn versions communicated the spatial problems better. She was right. Marcus asked 3 questions and then said the pipeline restructuring should be the firm's top priority for Q1. After the meeting, I asked her to stay. "I want to talk to you about the firm's future," I said when everyone else had gone. She sat down carefully. "I've been the sole principal for 9 years," I said. "That's too long, and it's starting to show in the decisions, not because I'm making bad ones, but because no single perspective is sufficient. I need a partner who understands what this place is supposed to do." I slid a document across the table. "This is a proposal for a junior principal position. Structured development. 2 years with a formal equity path after that. You would train under Marcus for the technical side and under me for everything else." She looked at the document. "I'm a project coordinator." "You're an architect who never had the chance to train as one," I said. "I'm offering you the chance. I don't have the credentials. The credentials are a process. I've spoken with 2 schools that offer working professional architecture programs. The firm would pay for it. The position would adjust around your coursework." I paused. "This is not a gift, Lily. This is an investment, and it is conditional on your performance, same as everyone else. If you don't want it, or if you want to think about it, say so." She looked at the document for a long time. Then she looked up. "Why didn't you just tell me who you were and offer me the position when I first came back with you? Why make me interview, work my way up?" "Because you needed to know you could," I said. "And so did I." She was quiet. Through the conference room windows, I could see Marcus gathering his things at his desk, and 2 of our junior drafters having an animated conversation over a set of blueprints. "I want it," she said. "Good. Personnel will set up the formal process next week." She stood to go and then stopped. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes. When you came to Baltimore, you didn't know me. You hadn't seen me. You just had a photograph in a report." She paused. "What made you actually get on the plane?" I thought about it honestly. I'd kept this firm going for 9 years, and I told myself it was for the legacy, for what Arthur built. But I was preserving something, not building anything new. I looked at the windows, at the afternoon light on the old buildings across the street, the kind of light Arthur used to stop and notice. I got on the plane because I was tired of preserving. She nodded slowly, like she understood exactly what I meant. 2 months later, Conrad appeared. He hadn't been served yet. Our attorney's office had had a scheduling delay, and he'd seen the same business section profile I'd hoped wouldn't run, the one a local journalist had written about the firm's new direction and the junior principal position. The article had named Lily. He called the firm's main line and left a message asking for a callback. Then he showed up. I was in a site meeting when my assistant texted me. I left the meeting, drove back to the office, and walked into the lobby to find Conrad standing at the reception desk in a blazer that was slightly too large for him, and the particular expression of a man performing confidence he doesn't feel. He looked older than I expected, thinner. The charm was still there, the surface of it, but it was working harder than it used to, like paint over a crack. "Mom," he said. The word came out too easy, too ready, like he'd practiced it. Conrad. I didn't move toward him. You should know there's a legal process in progress. Anything you say here can be relevant to that. I'm not here about legal processes. I'm here because I found out about Lily. His voice had a practiced hurt in it. My daughter. You found my daughter and didn't tell me. Your daughter, who you last saw when she was 4 years old, I said. Your daughter who you left along with her mother. Without child support, without contact, without... I've changed. He said it simply, as if this were information I would need to update my position. People change, Mum. I've had a hard few years. I know exactly what kind of years you've had, I said, and I know about the documentation you forged. I know about the mail you intercepted. I know about the access attempts. He went very still. The restraining order will be served within the week, I said. It prohibits contact with me, with Lily, with Maeve, and with any person or entity connected to this firm. I kept my voice level. If you attempt to contact Lily directly, that is also covered. She's my daughter. The charm was gone now, replaced with something raw. You don't have the right. She's 23 years old, I said. She gets to decide her own relationships. So far, her decision has been made for her by your choices. Now it's actually hers to make. I stepped toward the door and held it. The security guard outside will see you out. If you return, it's trespassing. He looked at me for a long moment. Something moved through his face. Not remorse exactly, but the recognition of a door that was not going to open. He left. I stood in the lobby for a minute after he was gone. Rosa would have said something practical, something about tea. My assistant said nothing, just handed me my messages and went back to her desk, which was exactly right. Lily found me in my office 20 minutes later. Someone had told her. She stood in the doorway. He came. Yes, she came in and sat down. He left quietly, I said. He'll be served this week. After that, he legally can't contact you. She was quiet. I don't want to talk to him, she said. I've thought about it. I don't feel anything about it that I'm suppressing. I just don't want to. That's your right. You didn't let me handle it. I looked at her. No, I didn't. I paused. I should have asked you first whether you wanted to. I'm sorry. She thought about it. No, she said finally. I think I would have frozen. I'm glad you were there. She looked out the window. Is this what it's like, having someone who just handles things? I don't know, I said honestly. Arthur handled other things. I handled other things. We split it. I paused. I imagine it's a bit like that. She nodded. Maeve is 3 now. She started calling me Gran, a decision she arrived at entirely on her own and announced one morning at breakfast as if it had always been true. She has Arthur's eyes and his way of tooting her head, and she has Lily's focused quality, that attention she turns on things that interest her, which right now is every living thing in the back garden, every insect and bird and the 3 azalea bushes she has named Gerald, Potato and Sue. Lily is 8 months into her junior principal program and 6 weeks into her coursework with a professional architecture program at Georgia Tech. She drives to Atlanta on Tuesday evenings and comes back late, and on Wednesday mornings she drinks coffee at my kitchen table with her notebook spread out and her hair still slightly damp from the early shower, and we talk about what she's learning. She asks good questions. She always has. There's a spare key on a hook by my front door. Lily has one and Maeve has one, which she can't reach yet but which she takes enormous pride in. 2 Sundays ago we drove out to Tybee Island. The house Arthur redesigned in 1979 is still standing. Same family, 3rd generation now. I'd called ahead and the current owner, a woman about Lily's age who'd grown up there, said we were welcome to walk around the outside. We stood on the back porch where Arthur had extended the wing, where you can see the water, and Lily stood very still for a moment, looking at the sight lines, at the way the rooms opened toward each other. at the logic of it. He understood how space makes people feel, she said. He did. I want to be able to do that. I know, I said. You're getting there. Maeve had found a hermit crab on the beach and was crouched down looking at it with complete concentration, her head tilted to one side. I have been a ghost in my own life for 9 years. Keeping things, preserving things, making sure nothing fell apart without bothering to ask whether what I was holding was worth the holding. I run a company. I live in a house that is, at last, not too quiet. My granddaughter asks me questions about load-bearing walls and about whether Arthur ever doubted himself, and I answer honestly, which is the only kind of answer she'll accept. I am 74 years old. I have made enough mistakes to know what they cost, and enough good decisions to know what they can build. I got on a plane to Baltimore for a photograph of a girl I'd never met, and that is the best decision I've made in 9 years. Before I go, I want to hear from you. If you had been in my place, would you have gotten on that plane? And what would you have done about Conrad? Leave your answer in the comments. And if you want more stories like this one, please subscribe to Never Too Mature, because life's most important chapters don't come with an age limit. I've been thinking a lot lately about the difference between keeping something alive and actually living. For 9 years after Arthur died, I told myself I was honoring what we built. I showed up to the office. I signed the contracts. I kept Whitmore Design running exactly as it had always run. And none of that was wrong exactly. But I was doing it the way you maintain a house no one lives in anymore. Dusting the furniture, keeping the lights on, not letting anything change. Conrad counted on that. He counted on me being so focused on preservation that I'd never look up long enough to notice what he'd taken, and for a long time he was right. That's the part that stays with me, not his dishonesty, which I can understand as a kind of moral failure with a clear shape, but my own stillness. The way grief can look like dignity from the outside while quietly becoming something closer to absence. What I know now, because Lily showed me without meaning to, is that the people who survive genuinely difficult things, not just endure them, but come through them intact, are never the ones who were protected from difficulty. They're the ones who learned in the middle of it that they could make a next decision. Lily in that shelter parking lot, loading Maeve into a car she was sleeping in, figuring out the next hour, and then the next one after that. She wasn't waiting to be rescued. She was in motion. I just happened to show up when she needed a direction to move toward. I offered her a job she had to earn. That mattered more than anything else I could have given her, more than the guest room, more than Maeve's pediatrician, more than any of it. Because what a person needs, when their confidence in their own capability has been worn down by circumstance, is not to be handed something. It's to be given a real test, and then pass it on their own terms. Marcus didn't know who she was when he walked into my office and said she thought like an architect. She earned that, and because she earned it, she knows she earned it. Conrad can't touch that. Nothing can. There's a version of this story where I stay in Savannah with my folder and my cold tea, and I tell myself it isn't my place to interfere. Lily's an adult. She has her own life. Who am I to show up in Baltimore with crackers in my coat pocket like I have any right to walk into her situation? I almost told myself that story. I sat on the edge of a hotel bed in my coat for 20 minutes, working up to dismissing the whole thing as presumptuous. What got me up was not courage exactly. It was arithmetic. I had time and she didn't have enough of it. Maeve had a fever. November in Baltimore was 38 degrees. The math was simple enough that even my 9 years of careful self-containment couldn't argue with it. I think that's what I'd want anyone to take from this, if there's anything worth taking. Not that family fixes things. Sometimes family is the whole problem, and Conrad is proof of that. Not that money solves things. I've known enough people with money to know it mostly just changes the texture of the difficulties. What I'd say is this: there is always a next decision available to you. Always. Lily knew that. She was making next decisions in a parking lot in November with a sick toddler. I just had to make mine, which was to get on a plane. The people who end up building something real are the ones who understand that integrity isn't dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It's just what you do when the easier thing is also the wrong thing, and you do it anyway, quietly, without waiting for someone to notice. Maeve calls me Gran now. She decided that herself. Some things, when they're right, don't require any persuasion at all.